I am Maya, 27 years old. 5 years ago, my family labeled me the ugly college dropout and cut me off completely. They said I'd never amount to anything. Well, last weekend, I showed up at my sister Sophia's graduation looking nothing like the broken girl they discarded. When her professor approached me with admiration in his eyes, my family froze. "You know her, wide?" he asked. I smiled and said, "You have no idea." The look on their faces was priceless. If you've ever been judged unfairly by family, hit subscribe now and let me know where you're watching from. Growing up in suburban Boston, achievement wasn't just encouraged in my family, it was expected. My parents, Thomas and Elizabeth Anderson, created an atmosphere where success was the only acceptable outcome. Dad was a corporate attorney at one of Boston's most prestigious firms, while Mom was a neurosurgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. Their credentials and accomplishments decorated our home like trophies, constant reminders of the legacy I was supposed to uphold. Then there was my younger sister, Sophia. From the moment she was born, she seemed destined to be the golden child of our family. 3 years my junior, Sophia embodied everything my parents valued. She was naturally beautiful with her perfect blonde hair and striking blue eyes, academically gifted without seeming to try and socially adept in ways I never was. By the time she was 10, she was already winning regional math competitions and playing violin at a near-professional level. I, on the other hand, was always the odd one out. My curly brown hair and average height made me feel invisible next to Sophia's standout beauty. While I wasn't unintelligent, traditional academics never came easily to me. My mind worked differently. I saw patterns and designs where others saw equations and theories. "Maya, why can't you apply yourself like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. These comparisons were subtle at first, disguised as encouragement, but grew more explicit as we got older. At dinner, my parents would celebrate Sophia's latest achievement, while my accomplishments in art class went unmentioned. When I brought home a B+ on a difficult history exam in 8th grade, my father barely looked up from his newspaper. "Good," he said flatly. That same evening, Sophia showed him her perfect math quiz, and he took the family out for ice cream in celebration. My teenage years were spent trying to carve out an identity separate from my sister's shadow and my parents' expectations. While they pushed me toward medicine, law, or business, I discovered my passion in the art room at school. Ms. Jenkins, my high school art teacher, was the first adult who seemed to see something special in me. "Maya, you have a unique perspective," she told me one afternoon while I worked on a mixed media project. "Your sense of color and composition is exceptional. Have you thought about studying design?" For the first time, I felt like my natural talents were being recognized rather than dismissed. I began staying late after school, developing my portfolio and exploring different artistic mediums. While my parents saw these extra hours as time wasted, I was finally finding my voice. By senior year of high school, my grades were respectable but not exceptional, mostly B's with a few A's in art and creative writing. But my portfolio had become something I was truly proud of. Ms. Jenkins helped me apply to several art schools, including a small but well-respected design college in Rhode Island. When the acceptance letter came, I was ecstatic. My parents were not. "Art school," my father scoffed during our family dinner. "What kind of career plan is that? The Anderson name means something in this community." My mother tried a different approach. "Honey, we're just worried about your future. Design isn't a stable career path. What about Northeastern? Their business program would give you so many more opportunities." What they really meant was that I was diverging from their carefully plotted course, the same one Sophia was following perfectly as she prepared to enter Harvard the following year. Despite their disapproval, I stood my ground for once. "This is what I'm good at," I insisted. "This is what makes me happy." In the end, they reluctantly agreed to support my education, though their disappointment was palpable. As I packed for college that August, I felt a mixture of liberation and anxiety. Finally, I would be somewhere where I could be valued for my unique abilities, rather than compared to my perfect sister. Or so I thought. The day I arrived at the Rhode Island College of Design, I felt like I could breathe for the first time. The campus hummed with creative energy students sporting vibrant hair colors and eclectic clothing styles, a stark contrast to the conservative uniformity I'd grown up with. My dorm room became my first true personal space walls, quickly covered with my sketches and inspiration boards. "This is where I belong," I whispered to myself that first night, filled with hope that my family would eventually see I had made the right choice. My first semester of college felt like stepping into a new world, one where creativity was valued above conformity. The campus of the Rhode Island College of Design buzzed with artistic energy that fed my soul. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Sophia's less impressive sister, or the Anderson girl who doesn't quite measure up. I was just Maya the freshman, with a passion for graphic design and a keen eye for typography. "Your conceptual approach is refreshing," my introduction to design professor commented on my first major project. "You're thinking beyond conventional solutions." Praise like this was unfamiliar territory for me, but I absorbed it like a plant finally receiving water after a long drought. I made friends quickly, other creative souls who understood the joy of getting lost in a project until 3 in the morning. My roommate Jasmine, a fiery textile design major from Chicago, became my first true friend. "Girl, you've got serious talent," she would tell me while we critiqued each other's work in our tiny dorm room. "Your parents are crazy for not seeing that." But midway through that first semester, something began to change. It started with exhaustion that I couldn't shake no matter how much coffee I consumed or how early I went to bed. Then came the unexplained weight gain despite eating the same as always. My skin broke out in rashes that makeup couldn't conceal, and my thick curly hair began falling out in clumps during showers. "Maybe it's just stress," I told Jasmine after missing my morning class for the third time in 2 weeks because I couldn't drag myself out of bed. "This doesn't seem like normal college stress," she countered, concern etching her face. "Maybe you should see someone at student health." The campus doctor ran some basic tests but found nothing conclusive. "Your blood work shows some irregularities," she said. "You should probably see a specialist, but these things take time to diagnose." Time I didn't have. As my health deteriorated, so did my attendance and work quality. Projects that once flowed easily now required monumental effort. The vibrant colors and patterns that had once danced in my mind were clouded by brain fog and fatigue. My first semester grades reflected this decline, mostly C's with 1D in color theory once my strongest subject. When I went home for winter break, I knew my parents would be disappointed, but I wasn't prepared for their reaction. "These grades are unacceptable," my father said coldly, tossing my grade report onto the kitchen table. "We're not paying thousands in tuition for mediocrity." "And what's happened to you?" my mother added, eyeing my puffy face and dull skin with thinly veiled disgust. "You look terrible. Are you even trying to take care of yourself?" Sophia, home from her first semester at Harvard, where she'd made the dean's list, said nothing in my defense. She simply watched those perfect blue eyes revealing nothing as our parents tore into me. "I'm not feeling well," I tried to explain. "The doctors think something might be wrong, but they're not sure what yet." "Convenient excuse for laziness," my father muttered. "If you put half the effort into studying that you put into excuses, you'd be getting A's." That night, I cried myself to sleep in my childhood bedroom surrounded by art supplies. I once loved feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. Returning to school after break, I was determined to improve, pushing myself beyond my physical limits. I stopped seeking medical help, convincing myself that maybe my parents were right. Maybe I was just lazy, using ill health as an excuse for my shortcomings. But my body had other plans. During midterms of my second semester, I collapsed in the design studio while working late. A classmate found me and called an ambulance. The emergency room doctor was more thorough than the campus health service. "Your symptoms point to an autoimmune condition," she explained. "We need to run more comprehensive tests which your insurance may not fully cover." Insurance. The word hit me like a truck. My parents' health insurance covered me as a dependent, but the specialized tests and treatments would generate bills they would see. Bills they would question. Bills that would prove I wasn't just making excuses. I scheduled the tests anyway, resulting in thousands in medical expenses and a tentative diagnosis of an autoimmune disorder that required ongoing treatment. Meanwhile, my academic performance continued to deteriorate. By April, the financial strain became unbearable. With medical bills mounting and my grades slipping below the minimum requirement for my scholarship, I knew I needed to have a difficult conversation with my parents. The phone call changed everything. "I need to take a medical leave," I explained, my voice shaking. "Just for a semester while I get my health under control." "Absolutely not," my father replied without hesitation. "If you leave, we're done supporting you financially. No more tuition, no more allowance, no more health insurance." "Dad, please," I begged. "The doctors say I'm sick. This isn't something I'm making up." "Maya," my mother's clinical voice cut in. "We've indulged your art school fantasy. We've watched you gain weight and neglect your appearance. Now you want us to believe you're too ill to complete basic college requirements. This pattern of excuses ends now." Their ultimatum was clear: stay in school despite my deteriorating health or lose everything. 2 weeks later, after missing several final projects, I was academically dismissed from my dream school. With nowhere else to go and medical bills I couldn't pay, I packed my belongings and headed back to the last place I wanted to be: home. Coming home as a college dropout was humiliating enough. Coming home as a college dropout with an unmanaged autoimmune condition that affected my appearance was unbearable. The moment I walked through the door of our stately colonial home in Newton, I felt the weight of disappointment and judgment. "You'll stay in the guest room," my mother informed me coolly. "We've converted your old bedroom into a home office for your father." The guest room, not even my own space anymore. The message was clear: I was a visitor, not a returning family member. The room was impersonal and sterile, with beige walls and generic hotel-like decor. Nothing like the colorful sanctuary my bedroom had once been. Living under my parents' roof again quickly became a nightmare of tension and unspoken resentment. Breakfast was eaten in silence, my father hidden behind his newspaper, my mother checking her surgical schedule on her tablet. When they did speak to me, it was with the detached politeness one might use with an unwelcome houseguest. "There's a position in medical records at the hospital," my mother mentioned one morning. "No degree required. You should apply." It wasn't a suggestion, but a directive. The next day, I found myself in human resources at Massachusetts General, filling out an application for a minimum wage filing job, a far cry from the design career I dreamed of. I took the job because I needed something, anything, to start paying off my medical bills and to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home. Each day, I filed paperwork in the basement of the hospital for 8 hours, then came home to the coldness of my parents' disappointment. Meanwhile, Sophia flourished at Harvard. Her perfect grades, her internship at a prestigious research lab, her handsome pre-med boyfriend from a good family, all were constant topics of dinner conversation. My presence at these meals seemed to be required solely to provide contrast to Sophia's success. "Sophia has been invited to present her research at the undergraduate symposium," my mother announced one evening, beaming with pride. "The youngest student ever selected." And no one asked about my day filing insurance claims in a windowless room. 3 months into this arrangement, I finally found a doctor willing to work with me on a sliding scale. Dr. Patel listened to my symptoms without judgment and ran comprehensive tests. "You have an autoimmune thyroid condition," she confirmed. "It's affecting multiple systems in your body. With proper medication and lifestyle changes, we can manage this, but it will take time." The diagnosis was both a relief and a burden. Finally, I had confirmation that I wasn't crazy or lazy. My symptoms were real, but the treatment would be expensive and ongoing. When I showed my parents the diagnosis paperwork and treatment plan, I hoped for understanding, perhaps even an apology for doubting me. Instead, my father skimmed the documents and handed them back with a dismissive gesture. "Convenient timing," he said, "just as we're discussing your future plans." "And who's going to pay for all this treatment?" "Thomas," my mother interjected. "The diagnosis appears legitimate." "Fine, it's legitimate. That doesn't change the fact that Maya needs to take responsibility for her choices. These medical expenses are the consequences of her decision to ignore our advice and drop out of college." I stood there stunned by his coldness. "I didn't choose to get sick, Dad." But you chose that art school over a reputable university with better medical facilities. You chose to neglect your health until it became a crisis. Actions have consequences, Maya. The conversation might have ended there if it weren't for Sophia arriving home unexpectedly. Hearing raised voices, she entered the kitchen where we were arguing. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between us with confusion. My father briefed her on my diagnosis and our disagreement about financial responsibility for my treatment. I expected Sophia with her medical aspirations to at least acknowledge the legitimacy of my condition. Instead, she sided with our parents. "Maya, maybe this is a wake-up call," she suggested, with that condescending tone she'd perfected over the years. "Maybe you need to reconsider your path. There are plenty of practical degree programs that could accommodate your health issues and still lead to stable employment." Something inside me snapped. After years of comparison, months of being doubted, and the physical pain of my untreated condition, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. My path. My path was being true to myself, instead of living the life you all mapped out for me. I'm sick, not stupid. I'm creative, not worthless. And I'm done apologizing for not being perfect like Sophia. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father stood, his face flushed with anger. "You listen to me. While you live under this roof, you will respect our values. You will get your health under control, then enroll at Northeastern in the fall for a proper business degree. Or you can leave and figure it out on your own. Those are your options." My mother nodded in agreement. "It's for your own good, Maya. This artistic phase has clearly led nowhere good." I looked at them, these people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and saw only disappointment and resentment. Then I looked at Sophia silently, pleading for some sign of sisterly support. Her eyes dropped to the floor. "You're just an ugly college dropout now," my father added, twisting the knife deeper. "A family disappointment. But it's not too late to correct course." In that moment, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of trying to earn their approval suddenly seemed like a waste of precious energy. If I was going to be judged no matter what I did, I might as well be judged for being authentically myself. "I'll leave," I said quietly. "I choose me." My mother looked genuinely surprised, as if she couldn't fathom me rejecting their ultimatum. "Don't be dramatic, Maya. Where will you go? How will you support yourself?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'd rather face that uncertainty than stay where I'm not valued for who I actually am." I packed my belongings that night, clothes, my art supplies, and the few personal items that remained in the guest room. As I prepared to walk out the door the next morning, my father handed me an envelope. "Your final allowance," he said stiffly. "After this, you're on your own, financially and otherwise." The envelope contained $500, the last support I would receive from the people who were supposed to love me most in the world. I took it because I needed it, but the cost to my spirit was immeasurable. As I walked down our tree-lined street with my life packed into 2 suitcases, I felt both terrified and strangely liberated. For the first time in my 22 years, I was completely on my own. The first few weeks after being cut off were a blur of anxiety and desperate calculations. The $500 my father had given me as a final allowance wouldn't last long in Boston, one of America's most expensive cities. I needed a plan, and quickly. My first call was to Amanda, a friend from high school who had always been kind to me, even when others followed Sophia's social lead. Amanda worked as a barista while taking night classes and shared a cramped apartment with 2 roommates in Jamaica Plain. "You can crash on our couch for 2 weeks, she offered without hesitation. "After that, Denise's boyfriend is moving in and space will be super tight." 2 weeks. I had 14 days to figure out a more permanent solution. The clock was ticking from the moment I wheeled my suitcases into Amanda's cluttered living room. "Have you tried contacting student services at your old school?" Amanda asked one evening as we sat on her balcony sharing a cheap bottle of wine. "They sometimes have emergency funds for students in crisis." I hadn't considered that option. The next morning, I called my former academic advisor at the design college. "Maya Anderson, Professor Garcia said warmly when I explained who was calling. I was so sorry to hear about your health issues and withdrawal. How are you doing? When I explained my situation, the diagnosis being cut off by my family, my desperate need for both medical care and housing, he sighed heavily. Unfortunately, since you're no longer enrolled, most college resources aren't available to you. But let me make some calls. The design community here is small but supportive. 2 days later, Professor Garcia connected me with a local clinic that offered sliding scale services for uninsured patients and a social worker who helped me apply for emergency healthcare coverage. It wasn't comprehensive, but it would allow me to begin the treatment Dr. Patel had prescribed. The social worker, Ms. Washington, also helped me find a room in a shared house for low-income women in transition. The space was tiny, barely bigger than a closet, but it was $300 a month, utilities included, and within walking distance of several commercial areas where I might find work. It's temporary, Ms. Washington reminded me, a stepping stone while you get back on your feet. With a roof over my head secured and basic medical treatment beginning, I turned my attention to finding work. I applied everywhere: coffee shops, retail stores, restaurants, anywhere that might hire someone with no degree and an erratic employment history consisting of one summer job at a campus bookstore and 3 months filing medical records. After 2 weeks of rejections, I spotted a small help wanted sign in the window of a local design studio while walking back from yet another failed interview. Halston Design Group was housed in a converted warehouse space in South Boston, its window displaying elegant business cards and brochures. With nothing to lose, I walked in and asked to speak with the owner. "Janet's in a meeting," the receptionist said, looking me up and down with mild concern. I knew what she saw: a young woman with the visible signs of an autoimmune condition, puffy face, patchy skin, thinning hair, pulled back in a sad attempt at professionalism. "Could I leave my portfolio for her to review?" I asked, pulling out the slim folder containing my best college projects and sketches I'd been working on during sleepless nights at the women's house. The receptionist hesitated, then nodded. "Leave your contact info too." I didn't expect to hear back. So when my phone rang 3 days later with Janet Halston herself on the line, I nearly dropped it in shock. "Your typography work is interesting," she said without preamble. "Raw but intuitive. Are you available to come in tomorrow morning? I could use someone to help with basic production work 20 hours a week." The pay was barely above minimum wage, but it was in my field. Sort of. Production work meant preparing other designers' completed projects for printing. Not creating my own designs, but it was a foot in the door. That first month living on my own was the hardest of my life. Between medical appointments, work at Halston, and a weekend job stocking shelves at a grocery store to make ends meet, I was exhausted. My tiny room became both sanctuary and prison, the only space that was truly mine, yet a constant reminder of how far I'd fallen from the comfortable suburban life I'd once known. But gradually, imperceptibly at first, things began to improve. The medication started to take effect, reducing my fatigue and skin problems. Janet noticed my attention to detail and occasionally asked my opinion on design elements for ongoing projects. "You have a good eye," she told me after I suggested a color adjustment to a brochure that had been bothering me. "Did you study design?" When I explained my abbreviated education and health challenges, I expected pity or dismissal. Instead, Janet nodded thoughtfully. "My sister has lupus. Took years to diagnose properly. Tough road." She studied me for a moment. "You interested in learning more about the business side? I need someone to help with client intake forms and project management. Pays $2 more per hour." It wasn't designing, but it was a step up. And more importantly, it was Janet acknowledging my potential beyond my current circumstances. 6 months after being cut off by my family, I had moved from production assistant to project coordinator at Halston Design. I'd quit the grocery store job and was able to focus on my health and building my design skills in the evenings. My tiny room now had a secondhand desk where I worked on my laptop, teaching myself additional design software through online tutorials. The most significant turning point came when Jessica Morales joined Halston as a senior designer. Jessica was everything I aspired to be: confident, stylish, and immensely talented. Where Janet was businesslike and practical, Jessica was creative and intuitive. Jessica noticed me immediately, not just as the quiet girl who managed project timelines, but as someone hungry to learn. "You've got natural talent," she told me after seeing sketches I was working on during lunch. "But you need technical refinement. Want me to show you some tricks?" Those lunchtime tutorials became the design education I'd lost when I left school. Jessica taught me not just techniques, but how to develop my own aesthetic voice. And unlike my parents, she valued my creative perspective. "The industry needs fresh viewpoints," she insisted. "Not just technically proficient designers who follow trends, but people who see things differently. People like you, Maya." With Jessica's mentorship and my health stabilizing, I began to take on small freelance projects: business cards for local entrepreneurs, logos for friends of friends, simple websites for neighborhood businesses. Each completed project built my portfolio and my confidence. One year after being thrown out of my parents' house, I had saved enough to move into my own studio apartment. It was small and in an unfashionable neighborhood, but it was mine. I painted the walls of vibrant teal, hung my own artwork, and bought a proper desk for my growing freelance business. When I hung the final picture, a simple framed print that read "Begin Again," I stood in the center of my tiny kingdom and cried, not from sadness or self-pity, but from pride. I had rebuilt from nothing. I had survived. I allowed myself that one evening of reflection, then got back to work. This was just the beginning. The next 2 years passed in a blur of hard work, creative growth, and healing. My role at Halston Design continued to evolve as Janet recognized my expanding skills, and Jessica advocated for giving me more creative opportunities. By the end of my second year, I was handling small design projects independently, while continuing to manage the workflow for larger accounts. "You should be doing this full time," Jessica told me one evening as we worked late on a branding project. "Your design solutions are consistently better than half the professionals I know." Her encouragement meant everything, but I was still building both my confidence and my financial security after starting from zero. The memory of those first terrifying weeks after being cut off kept me cautious about making any risky career moves. My health had stabilized with proper treatment, though I still had occasional flares that reminded me of my condition's persistence. The physical transformation was remarkable. My skin cleared, my hair grew back thicker than before, and as the inflammation reduced, my natural features emerged from the puffy mask that had so disgusted my parents. Looking in the mirror no longer triggered pain and shame. I saw someone resilient, someone who was becoming more authentically herself every day. Someone who no longer needed her family's approval to recognize her own worth. My freelance client base grew steadily through word of mouth. A logo I designed for a local bakery caught the attention of the owner's cousin, who ran a small tech startup and needed branding help. That project led to connections in Boston's growing tech scene, where my clean, intuitive design aesthetic found an appreciative audience. On my 24th birthday, 2 years after being disowned, I treated myself to dinner at a restaurant I couldn't have afforded the year before. While waiting for my table, I checked my email and found a message that would change everything. "Hi, Maya," it began. "I'm Alex Rivera, founder of NeuroSync. We're launching a health tech platform next quarter and need complete branding and UI design. Jessica Morales recommended you highly. Are you available for a meeting next week?" NeuroSync was making waves in Boston's startup community. Their innovative approach to mental health technology had secured major venture capital funding, and they were growing rapidly. This wasn't a small freelance project. This was a major commercial opportunity. The meeting with Alex went better than I could have imagined. He responded enthusiastically to my portfolio and approach, especially my emphasis on creating intuitive, accessible interfaces. "Healthcare technology often ignores the human element," I explained. "People interacting with health platforms are often already stressed or unwell. Design should ease that burden, not add to it." Alex nodded energetically. "Exactly. That's exactly what we're missing with our current materials." By the end of the meeting, I had secured the largest contract of my career, a 3-month project that would pay more than I made in a year at Halston. When I told Janet I needed to reduce my hours to accommodate this opportunity, she surprised me. Take a leave of absence instead, she suggested. This is your chance to establish yourself independently. The door is open if things don't work out, but I think you're ready to fly. The NeuroSync project consumed the next 3 months of my life. I poured everything I had learned, both technically and through my own healthcare experiences, into creating a brand identity and user interface that was both beautiful and deeply functional. When we launched, the response was overwhelming. NeuroSync's revolutionary approach extends to its design, wrote a prominent tech blogger. The interface created by emerging design talent Maya Anderson sets new standards for healthcare applications. My name in print associated with excellence rather than failure or disappointment. I saved that article not out of vanity, but as a milestone marker on my journey. After NeuroSync, everything accelerated. Referrals poured in from impressed investors and partners who had seen my work. 6 months after completing the project, I made a decision that had once seemed impossible. I launched my own design consultancy, focusing on healthcare and wellness brands. Maya Anderson. Design started small, just me working from my apartment with a single part-time assistant helping with administrative tasks. But within a year, I had hired 2 junior designers and moved into a small but stylish office space in an up-and-coming neighborhood. As my business grew, so did my financial security. I moved to a beautiful apartment in a dormant building, started contributing to a retirement account, and even began setting aside money for a future property purchase. The girl who had once lived on a couch and then in a closet-sized room now had a walk-in closet filled with well-made clothes that reflected her personal style. Throughout this professional transformation, I maintained the boundaries I had established with my family, which is to say I had no contact with them at all. Occasionally, I would hear updates through mutual acquaintances or see glimpses of their lives on social media. My father had made partner at his law firm. My mother had published a significant research paper, and Sophia had graduated from Harvard with highest honors and been accepted to their prestigious graduate program in biochemistry. Their lives had continued without disruption after cutting me out. In dark moments, I wondered if they ever thought about me, ever regretted their cruelty, ever questioned whether I was even alive. But I refused to let these thoughts consume me. I had built a new life surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was. Then in April of my 27th year, almost exactly 5 years after being labeled an ugly college dropout and thrown out, I received an unexpected message on social media from a former neighbor. "Just thought you might want to know," she wrote. "Your sister Sophia is graduating from her master's program next month. There's going to be a big reception afterward. Your parents have been talking about it to everyone who'll listen." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure why this information affected me so deeply. I had long ago accepted that I would never be part of family celebrations again. Yet something about this particular milestone stirred complicated feelings I thought I had resolved. That night, I called my therapist, Dr. Rachel Klein, whom I had been seeing monthly since I could afford proper mental health care. "I don't know why I'm even considering attending," I admitted. They made it very clear they wanted nothing to do with me. "What would attending mean to you?" Dr. Klein asked in her thoughtful way. "What would you hope to gain from the experience?" I reflected on her question for several days. This wasn't about reconciliation. I had no illusions about my parents suddenly embracing me with loving arms. It wasn't even about Sophia, who had stood by silently while our parents demolished my self-worth. I finally realized during a morning meditation session, I want them to see that they didn't destroy me, that I flourished despite their rejection, not because of their so-called tough love. I want to close that chapter on my terms, not theirs. The decision made, I began preparing for what would undoubtedly be an emotionally challenging day. I would attend the ceremony discreetly, not to cause a scene, but to witness my sister's achievement, and perhaps in some small way reclaim my connection to my own history. What I didn't anticipate was how this decision would become a turning point in my story, a moment that would bring my journey full circle in ways I could never have imagined. The morning of Sophia's graduation dawned bright and clear, a perfect May day in Cambridge. I stood in front of my full-length mirror, evaluating my appearance with critical eyes. This would be the first time my family had seen me in 5 years. And while I told myself their opinion didn't matter, I wanted to project strength and success. I had chosen my outfit carefully, a tailored crimson dress that complemented my now healthy complexion, subtle gold jewelry, including a custom necklace designed by an artist friend, and heels that added confidence to my posture. My once thinning hair now fell in thick waves past my shoulders, styled professionally the day before. "You look like a successful businesswoman, because you are one," I reminded my reflection. Nothing to prove, nothing to fear. The Uber dropped me at Harvard's historic campus, where families in celebratory moods streamed toward the commencement venue. I blended in easily, just another well-dressed guest there, to celebrate a graduate's achievement. No one would guess I was the disowned daughter returning to observe from a distance. Finding a seat toward the back of the audience, I scanned the crowd for familiar faces. There they were, 3 rows from the front. My parents looking exactly as I remembered, yet somehow smaller. My father's hair had more gray, my mother's face a few more lines, but they still carried themselves with that distinctive Anderson confidence that had once intimidated me so deeply. As the ceremony began, I felt strangely detached, as if watching a play about someone else's family. The pomp and circumstance, the distinguished speakers, the proud parents. It was a world I had been exiled from, yet here I was, witnessing it all through new eyes. When Sophia's name was called, I watched her cross the stage with the same graceful assurance she had always possessed. Sophia Elizabeth Anderson, Master of Science in Biochemistry, graduating with distinction, the announcer proclaimed. My parents stood and applauded vigorously, my father actually whistling his approval. I found myself applauding too, a complicated mixture of emotions swirling inside me. Pride for my sister's accomplishment, sadness for the relationship we might have had, anger at how differently my creative pursuits had been valued, but mostly a calm certainty that I had found my own path to success and fulfillment. After the ceremony, graduates and families spilled onto the lawn for a reception. I kept my distance, observing my family from behind a large oak tree as they posed for photos with Sophia in her cap and gown. They looked like the perfect American success story, distinguished professional parents and their brilliant, beautiful daughter. No one would guess a second daughter had been erased from the family portrait. I was about to leave, having seen what I came for, when a distinguished older man approached me with a look of recognition. "Excuse me," he said warmly. "You're Maya Anderson, aren't you? I recognized you from your feature in Boston Business Journal's Designers to Watch." Startled, I nodded and extended my hand. "Yes, I'm Maya, and you are Dr. William Reynolds, Chair of Biochemistry, and your sister's thesis advisor." He smiled broadly. "I was quite impressed with the branding work you did for NeuroSync. We're actually considering a similar approach for our department's public health initiative." As we chatted about design and healthcare communication, I noticed my family approaching from behind Dr. Reynolds. They hadn't seen me yet, still focused on navigating the crowded lawn, but in seconds they would be face to face with the daughter they had discarded. Reynolds turned as they approached. "Ah, Sophia, congratulations again. I was just having a fascinating conversation about design and healthcare communication." He gestured toward me. "You know her, I presume." The moment froze in time. My parents stopped abruptly, confusion giving way to shock as recognition dawned. Sophia's mouth opened slightly, her academic triumph momentarily forgotten. 5 years of absence collapsed into a single electric moment of reckoning. "You know her," Dr. Reynolds repeated, sensing the sudden tension, but not understanding its source. I smiled, meeting my father's stunned gaze directly for the first time in 5 years. "You have no idea," I said softly. The words meant for my family, though, addressed to Dr. Reynolds. My mother recovered first social training, overriding emotional shock. "Maya," she said, her voice artificially bright. "What a surprise." My father seemed unable to reconcile the successful, healthy woman before him with the ugly dropout he had dismissed so cruelly. "You look different," he managed finally. Yes, I agreed simply. I am. Dr. Reynolds, sensing he had inadvertently stepped into family drama, tried to smooth the awkward moment. Sophia never mentioned her sister was the Maya Anderson revolutionizing healthcare design. What a talented family. We're very proud of both our daughters, my father claimed smoothly, attempting to rewrite history with a single sentence. Maya has always had a creative spirit. The audacity of this revisionism might have angered me once, but now it struck me as almost pitiful. How interesting that you say that, I replied calmly. The last time we spoke, you called me an ugly college dropout and a family disappointment before cutting me off completely. Reynolds' expression shifted from confusion to discomfort as the true nature of our family dynamic became clear. Maya, this is hardly the place, my mother hissed, glancing around to see if others were witnessing this disruption of their perfect family narrative. I agree, I said. Your daughter's graduation is a celebration of her achievement. I only came to witness that, not to create a scene. Sophia, who had remained silent, finally spoke. You came for my graduation. After everything. Something in her voice, a hint of the sister I had once known before competition and parental favoritism had divided us, touched me unexpectedly. Congratulations on your accomplishment, Sophia, I said sincerely. It represents years of hard work and dedication. Perhaps we could discuss this privately, my father suggested, his lawyer's instinct for damage control kicking in. We're staying at the Charles Hotel. We could have dinner. I didn't come for a reconciliation, I interrupted gently but firmly. I came to close a chapter of my life, to see with my own eyes that I've moved beyond needing your approval or support. Other graduates and families flowed around us, oblivious to the intense family drama unfolding in their midst. Dr. Reynolds, still caught awkwardly in our family standoff, excused himself with a murmured comment about finding his wife. You've done well for yourself, then? My mother asked, her clinical assessment evident in her tone. Yes, I confirmed, feeling no need to enumerate my successes. Despite being cut off without support during a health crisis, I've built a life and business I'm proud of. We always knew you had potential. My father attempted his revisionist history, continuing. Sometimes tough love is necessary for growth. I could have argued, could have detailed the nights spent wondering if I'd have enough money for both food and medication, the humiliation of couch surfing while ill, the struggle to rebuild from nothing. But their narrative was no longer my concern. What you did wasn't tough love, I said quietly. It was conditional love, which is no love at all. I didn't come today to hear you justify your actions or claim credit for my success. I came to say goodbye properly on my terms as the person I've become. I extended my hand professionally to my father, then my mother, the same gesture I would use with clients or colleagues. After a moment's hesitation, they each shook it briefly, the formality emphasizing the death of our familial bond more powerfully than any emotional outburst could have. Finally, I turned to Sophia. I wish you well in your career, I told her, meaning it despite everything. You've earned this achievement. As I turned to leave, Sophia called after me. Maya, wait. Could we talk sometime, just the two of us? I paused, considering her request. The sister who had stood by silently while our parents demolished me was asking for connection. Did I owe her that? Did I want it? My contact information isn't hard to find, I said finally. The choice to reach out is yours. With that, I walked away from my family for the second time, but this time on my terms, head high, no tears, no desperate uncertainty about my future. As I crossed the sunlit Harvard yard, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I was still carrying. The confrontation hadn't gone as I'd imagined in the many scenarios I'd rehearsed. There had been no tearful apologies, no dramatic reconciliation, no public humiliation of those who had humiliated me. Instead, there had been something more powerful, the quiet assertion of my own worth independent of their validation or approval. I had faced my past and found it could no longer hurt me. Whatever happened next would be entirely my choice. The aftermath of the graduation confrontation wasn't the clean break I had imagined. Life rarely provides such tidy conclusions. Instead, the weeks that followed brought unexpected developments that forced me to reconsider what healing truly means. 3 days after the ceremony, an email arrived from Sophia. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote, "but there are things you don't know, things I need to say. Can we meet just once?" I stared at those words on my screen for a long time, emotions battling within me. The sister who had remained silent while our parents cut me off was asking for a chance to explain. Did I want to hear it? Could any explanation justify her complicity? After consulting with Dr. Klein, I agreed to meet Sophia at a neutral location, a coffee shop midway between my office and her new research position at Massachusetts General Hospital. I arrived early, choosing a table in the corner where our conversation would have some privacy. When Sophia walked in, I was struck by how much she had changed. The golden girl with perfect posture and confidence now moved with a tension I recognized all too well, the weight of trying to live up to impossible expectations. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. Her voice was softer than I remembered, missing the assured tone that had once been her trademark. "I'm not making any promises," I replied, "but I'm willing to listen." Sophia nodded, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. "First, I need to say I'm sorry. Not just for staying silent when they threw you out, but for years of participating in their comparisons, of accepting my role as the good daughter at your expense." The apology surprised me, direct, without qualifiers or excuses. It wasn't what I had expected. "After you left," she continued, "things changed. Without you as the counterpoint, I became the sole focus of their expectations. Every decision, every grade, every relationship, nothing was ever quite good enough. I started to understand what you'd been dealing with all along." "You were always their favorite," I pointed out, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Their favorite project," she corrected me. "Not their favorite daughter. There's a difference I didn't understand until recently." She told me about the years after my departure, how our parents had erased every trace of me from the house, forbidden any mention of my name, acted as if their family had always been just 3 people instead of 4. How the pressure on her had intensified to compensate for the failure I represented. "My relationship with Jackson ended because Dad didn't think his family was prominent enough," she revealed, referring to the pre-med boyfriend I remembered from years ago. "Mom vetoed my interest in pediatrics because neurosurgery is more prestigious. Every choice has been about maintaining the Anderson image, not about what might make me happy." "Why didn't you ever reach out before now?" I asked the question that had lingered for years. Sophia's eyes dropped to the table. "Fear, mostly. Fear of losing them like you did, fear of admitting how wrong they'd been, fear of facing my own cowardice." She looked up again, meeting my gaze directly. "And shame. So much shame for not standing up for you." Her honesty disarmed me. I had expected excuses, or a sanitized version of events, not this raw admission of complicity and regret. "The woman you've become," she continued, "the success you've achieved entirely on your own. It forced me to question everything. When I saw you at graduation standing there so confident and accomplished, despite everything they did, everything I failed to prevent, it broke something open in me." We talked for hours that day, peeling back layers of hurt and misunderstanding. Sophia shared details I hadn't known. How our parents had controlled her through financial and emotional manipulation. How her apparent perfection had been achieved at the cost of her autonomy and authenticity. "I'm not asking you to forgive them," she clarified as our conversation neared its end. "I'm not even asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I see now what happened, and I'm trying to find my own way forward, inspired partly by what you've done." As I walked home from that first meeting, I felt unsettled. The neat narrative I had constructed, golden sister complicit in my rejection, had been complicated by Sophia's revelations. She had been both privileged and constrained by our parents' approval, both beneficiary and victim of their conditional love. Over the following months, Sophia and I met occasionally for coffee or lunch. Our relationship was tentative, nothing like the close bond sisters might ideally share, but it was something new and authentic, emerging from the ashes of our past. Through Sophia, I learned that our parents had reached out to her repeatedly after the graduation confrontation, seeking information about my life and career. Their interest seemed driven less by genuine remorse and more by the realization that I had achieved success they could no longer dismiss. I had become someone whose association might benefit them, the exact opposite of the liability they had once considered me. "They've asked for your contact information," Sophia admitted during one of our meetings. "I told them that was your decision to make, not mine." I appreciated her respect for my boundaries. "I'm not ready for that," I told her. "Maybe someday, but only if they can acknowledge what they did without justification or revision." Meanwhile, my design consultancy continued to flourish. I hired 2 more designers and a project manager, allowing me to focus on creative direction and business development. A feature in a major design publication brought national attention to my work, particularly my approach to healthcare interfaces, informed by my own patient experiences. With financial security firmly established, I expanded my focus beyond my immediate survival and success. I established a small scholarship fund for art and design students with chronic health conditions, a way of creating the support system I had lacked at my most vulnerable point. One evening, after reviewing applications for the scholarship's second year, I reflected on how far I had come from that terrified young woman with 2 suitcases and $500. The journey had been harder than anyone should have to endure, but it had forged in me a resilience and self-knowledge I might never have developed otherwise. My relationship with Sophia continued to evolve cautiously. She began to make her own small rebellions against our parents' expectations, choosing research projects based on interest rather than prestige, dating someone from a background they would never approve of, occasionally setting boundaries around their involvement in her life. "It's easier for me because of what you went through," she acknowledged during one of our conversations. "I've seen both the worst they can do and the fact that it's possible to survive it. You blazed that trail." As for our parents, I maintained my distance. Through Sophia, I learned they had various reactions to my successful reemergence, oscillating between claiming credit, "We always knew she had potential," revisionist history. We never cut her off completely, and minimization of their actions. All families have disagreements. Their inability to honestly confront what they had done confirmed that my boundaries were necessary and healthy. True reconciliation would require genuine accountability, not convenient rewriting of the past to preserve their self-image. Dr. Klein helped me process these complex family dynamics in our therapy sessions. "Healing doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation," she reminded me. "Sometimes it means accepting that the relationship you wanted isn't possible, and building a life rich with connections that are based on genuine acceptance." And that's what I had done. My chosen family now included Jessica, who had become both mentor and friend; Amanda, who had offered her couch during my darkest days; clients who had become collaborators and supporters; fellow artists and designers who appreciated my unique perspective; and even in a carefully bounded way, Sophia, as she worked to become someone distinct from our parents' expectations. 5 years after being labeled an ugly college dropout and thrown away by the people who should have loved me most unconditionally, I had not only survived, but thrived. The journey had been painful beyond words, but it had led me to an authentic life aligned with my true self, something my parents, for all their outward success, had never achieved. The most profound lesson I learned through this ordeal was that family is not merely biological. Family consists of those who see your authentic self and value it, who support you through challenges, rather than punishing you for them, who celebrate your unique gifts, rather than trying to force you into a predetermined mold. I now understood that the abandonment I had experienced while traumatic had ultimately freed me to discover who I truly was, apart from the Anderson family expectations and dynamics. The identity I had built was entirely my own, hard-won, authentic, and unassailable. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a major rejection? Sometimes the people we expect to support us unconditionally are the ones who hurt us most deeply. But that rejection doesn't define your worth or potential. If my story resonated with you, please share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in this journey of resilience and self-discovery, please subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming adversity. Thank you for listening to my story of transformation from the ugly college dropout to the woman I was always meant to become.